again, testing this out. Just a simple live and vibe talking theology. I'll be on Rogues Gallery on Trinity Radio around 4:30 Pacific Standard Time. And as of right now, I'm getting millions and millions of updates from folks about that. So I'll set that over there. But yeah, how's it going? Just wanted to get on for about 30 minutes. I'm trying to do more lives, be more productive, and all of that. Um, First off, Merry Christmas to everyone. Hope you had a wonderful Advent Sunday. Today's Monday. Let's see. Just some personal life updates. One thing I got some really good feedback from my PhD supervisor. Um, really excited about that. First off, Amber, one, hello. Two, am I coming through okay? So I guess two things. One, if I'm not coming through okay, refresh your browser. Refresh your browser. Because apparently that happens to me when I see other people talking and all that sort of stuff. So apparently it's not an issue with the stream or my mic or anything. It happened on Vocab's channel. It happened on Arthur's channel. Happens all sorts of ways. So um, for some people, there's an issue, in which case just refresh and you'll be fine. Leave and come back, kind of thing. If anyone's having issues in the stream, Amber, cool. Thank you, boss. Um, but yeah, I submitted. So for the PhD, I've submitted technically three chapters. So one is just a standard introduction. Just kind of here's the normal thing. Here's the blueprint for the PhD. Then the next two chapters, the first one was on Second Temple Jewish views of the scope of salvation or lack thereof, which has to be completely rewritten now, thanks to my supervisor's keen eye for detail and my missing. No hat, well, my Dodger hat broke. So I don't know if you can see, I'm sure this is high quality theology content. You want hats like this because they hold together really well. My old Dodger hat was Velcro, and it just fell apart. It was not a good hat. So this is a hat I got with Nugs when we went to an Angels game, so maybe I'll wear that. But then you can't see my face, but maybe that's to y'all's benefit. So maybe I could just pull an Andrew Wilson and talk like this the whole time. Anyway, so did chapter one, submitted two chapters. Mike tore it apart, very helpfully so. And then the second chapter is on Romans and Corinthians and all of that. So that was helpful. That was fun. Very helpful feedback, but apparently I'm doing okay on that front, which is cool. George Fox hat. Why would I didn't go to George Fox. I need a Fuller hat. Or actually, there we go. I need a Ridley hat. Uh, but yeah, any theology questions or anything you want to ask? I got about 30 minutes before I have to go pick up Nugs. Here we go. For those interested in apocalyptic, actually, you know what? A really helpful book that I've been reading is this one, Rethinking Paul by Edwin Van Driel, I think is how you say it. Rethinking Paul, Protestant Theology and Pauline Exegesis. Very helpful book, fairly expensive, but the helpful aspect of this book, aside from just being very thorough, is the author who's I think he's at Pittsburgh Seminary. Yeah, Pittsburgh, a PCUSA seminary. And he does some really interesting stuff looking at the apocalyptic Paul, new perspective, and kind of bringing Pauline scholarship to kind of Protestant theology, justification, church, history, Israel, all that. And it's a really helpful book. When was it published? Fairly recently. 2021. So, okay, yeah. But yeah, it's out of the Current Issues in Theology series, which is really, really helpful. There's stuff by George Hunsinger in there. Catherine Tanner. Really helpful stuff in there. Why does Wayne Grudem hate women? I have no idea. I think for Grudem, and how's it going, Ethan? I think for Grudem, there is a strong sense of holding the line. If you give an inch, he thinks others will take a mile. And I think there's some, I can understand that from a culture war perspective. At least I can understand that in some sense. But I don't think he honestly hates women, of course. I think there are some complementarians that do seem to really dislike women, or at least seem to be afraid of women, but I don't think that's every complementarian. I think too many complementarians do, but I don't think by any stretch of the imagination. All complementarians do. Hashtag not all complementarians. I just realized I'm cleaning up my desk in front of you guys, which makes for really good theology content. So my apologies, but I've got tons of stuff here that just can't go. Just has to move. Sorry. Uh, so so yeah. So I'm going through um, uh, dissertation work. So I'm in the. I have to pick up. I finally bought a really helpful book, a German book on universalism. So I'm having to deal with that and translate it, which it's only in German. And it was published in 2009. My German is very mid, and so I'm having to look at this and get help because I'm like, oh my gosh. And apparently the German in that book is very very difficult even for people who know how to translate and stuff. Um, so that's helpful. It's by Jens Adam. Very, very interesting, very helpful. Plenty to critique, but it's a very limited book, and limited not in a bad sense, but he focuses on Romans 1. It's basically a book entirely focused on Romans 1 through chapters 1 through 11. So it's helpful, but it's very, very narrow. I know Chat GPT is good. Can't really use, I mean, you can use that as an aid. Sorry, I'm looking, sorry for that. But yeah, so I'm having to deal with that, but incorporating that George Frey and George Frey and Lauren Stuck. How do you say that? I got mealy mouth. Stuckenbrook. I always think there's an extra R in there. Struckenbrook, but it's Stuckenbrook. He's in Germany, but I think he went to Princeton or taught at Princeton. Um, so Amber asks, the boss asks, if I can pull it back up. Sorry. Why do evangelicals confuse theophany and Christophany? I have no idea. I I have no idea. This is going to sound weird as an evangelical. I generally don't find what evangelicals argue about to be particularly interesting. Example being, um, the number one question I get when I was or am preaching through Revelation is my view of the millennium, and am I a futurist, am I an idealist, am I partial preterist, all that sort of stuff. And I just kind of go, I don't think John this year cares anything about those sorts of questions, and that makes for a more interesting conversation. So it's kind of like that. I suppose I'm just not that interested in what evangelicals are arguing about. Excuse me. Let's see. Ethan had a question. Sorry, Ethan. For some reason it doesn't. Thoughts on absolute yes. Fleming Rutledge's book, Advent. Where is it? I have it around here. It's gonna sound dumb. I know it's a purple book. I know it's sorry you can't see it, but I got books right here. I got books here and here, and like stacked horizontally, which is dumb. I don't know why I did that. And then you got all those bookshelves and that bookshelf there, and um, where is anyway? Fantastic book, Ethan. Her book is really helpful. There hasn't been. This is gonna sound bad. I know there's been a few books. I think Esau McCauley. There was a small series. I want to say by one of the major evangelical publishers. I can't remember which one it was off the top of my head. But Esau McCauley out of Wheaton did one. But they're smaller, kind of. Not they're substantial, but they're smaller books. They're smaller volumes in Advent, I think. I want to say Tish Harrison Warren is one of the authors, but don't quote me on that. But it's like a series. Just look up Esau McCauley Advent, and that series will pop up. I skimmed it. I thought it was helpful. I've been mostly focused on. This is going to sound bad, Ethan. I'm sure you have heard this plenty of times. I'm not a particularly thematic preacher. I try to focus on the text and what my church needs out of the text. So I tend not to be as concerned with kind of the bells and whistles of that, probably to my detriment. So the joke is I'm closer to an expositional preacher, although my wife says I'm not fully expositional. I don't know what that means. I've read like 2 books on preaching in my life, so I'm pretty limited. So sorry, let me get back to this. I wish it would just stay up here. That'd be so helpful. How's it going, Alexandria? Our church is going through it as an Advent study. Yeah. Her book on Advent is fantastic. It was very helpful, characteristically insightful, wonderful. Bonhoeffer has an excellent Advent book. I don't doubt that. Bonhoeffer. A really good Bonhoeffer book. Don't read Eric Metaxas. Uh, I'm sure there's good stuff in it. I've read pieces of it. He's a good writer. Like I actually like his style of writing, but it's not a. It's a very it doesn't reflect the complexities of Bonhoeffer or Bonhoeffer. So read Strange Glory by Charles Marsh. He's out of, I want to say, it's one of the Virginia University, University of Virginia. It's in Charlottesville. That Virginia University. I forget the exact one, but he's a Bonhoeffer scholar, and his book Strange Glory is really good. It captures Bonhoeffer's how much Bonhoeffer was actually involved in the resistance, but also the assassination attempt, which is a huge uh, plot of the new Bonhoeffer movie. Which I'll still see. I like Bonhoeffer, so I'll see the movie, but I'm not particularly enthused that they're making his involvement in the assassination attempt on Adolf Hitler a major point. I think Bonhoeffer's engagement in the church with the confessing church would be a far more interesting thing to talk about. Um, Specifically, the sermons he preached and the kind of politics that he had to navigate with the Nazification of the church and stuff like that. I think that would have been a far more interesting. Um, maybe Bonhoeffer doesn't need a movie. Maybe Bonhoeffer needs a miniseries. Give him 8 episodes. Look at his whole life with all its complexity. But yeah, Bonhoeffer, fantastic book on Advent. And for those looking for more on Bonhoeffer than Metaxas, read Charles Marsh. Absolutely fantastic. Um, Theology nerd, yeah, whatever, boss. Let's see. That. What are my thoughts on Michael Heiser? By Sam Wright. I'm generally favorable to Heiser. I find Heiser to be I find Heiser to be like NT Wright, generally correct, or at least that's a very reasonable take, or that's very helpful. There is this kind of we've missed this and I found it kind of thing with Heiser, and that's not to say Heiser himself propagates that, but there is this kind of others have missed this and we're going to recapture it. I'm like, there's truth to that, but it can often feel a little bit like oh, what's the word? It can feel a bit like a tour guide kind of thing. But I don't think that's Heiser. I think that's more his followers. But I think Heiser is helpful. I find Heiser very helpful, and I didn't find his stuff on women and gender to be particularly helpful. I think Heiser tends to prefer a little more esoteric readings of certain texts than I think are warranted. Um, that's not to say he's wrong. His I forget the name that he. Uh, there was a reading he seems supportive of. I think his stuff on Jude, for example, is very very helpful. I don't. I think his reading of 1 Corinthians 11 and the women and the long hair was often helpful and often just not. But I'm still unsatisfied with most readings of 1 Corinthians 11 and the hair and veiling and praying and prophesying. I don't think the text teaches the subordination of women at all, but I don't feel we fully cracked that text. But I don't think Heiser's reading of the covering as referring to genitalia, for lack of to keep the stream from getting booted. I don't find that reading helpful. I want to say it was Preston Massey, or no, what was his name? Maybe it was Preston Massey. Preston Massey argued something else. What did Oh, he did some really helpful stuff. What's his name? It's not Preston Massey. Because he argued with Mark Goodacre. Troy Martin, that is Troy Martin, Dr. Troy Martin. Very very interesting stuff. Not something I fully agree with, but Troy Martin's argument I thought was interesting, but ultimately unconvincing. But anyway, I think Heiser is very prone to misrepresentation, and Heiser does seem to make bigger claims. Um, and Heiser, um, yeah. So one of the things I disliked about Heiser was he would dislike. That's not the right word. Got rest in power, King. Like it's all good. Was he would kind of play the middle without taking a side. I'm like, okay, come on. Like there are certain things like you can't be in the middle of certain debates. Like sorry, like I just don't find that to be helpful. What are you doing? Okay, so sorry, I got an email from someone from church. Oh, not a problem, Victor. You are totally good. Use whatever you need in my office. Let's see. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Heiser. Generally very helpful, generally very insightful, very, very helpful with Old Testament. Not as helpful in New Testament, but still everyone should read Heiser, and Heiser is very prone to being misrepresented, specifically by someone like Doreen Virtue and others. Don't listen to the critics of Heiser on that. Just ignore that. Apocalyptic Narnian Theology, thoughts by my boy Clayton. I mean, sure, why not? I mean, I don't think Lewis was apocalyptic really at all. I'm sure, but that'd be an interesting like master thesis, merging apocalyptic theology a la like a Bev Gaventa or Douglas Campbell or Martinez de Boer or folks like that with C.S. Lewis. That could be interesting. That'd be an interesting master's thesis or article, and I know that would actually get published because there has been a resurgence in Tolkien and in Lewis, and as it relates to theology and dogmatics. Austin, it's not Austin Fisher, Austin Freeman. I want to say Austin Freeman. Again, I'm off the top of my head. I read this. He wrote a book. He published a book. I think it was Zondervan called Tolkien Dogmatics, as in J.R.R. Tolkien. Very interesting. He's at Houston Christian. Very very interesting book. I skimmed a chapter and it's really interesting. So I think there's a resurgence of that, and so that might be something worthwhile pursuing as a master's degree, apocalyptic and the Inklings or something like that. That'd be really interesting. Let me see. Go back to this. Uh, Heiser didn't care about some arguments complementary. Yeah, Heiser kind of did this thing with the women in ministry debate where he kind of be like, I can argue both sides very well, and it was kind of this, well, okay. Like one of the final things he said was, I think he ultimately became functionally egalitarian, which fair enough. But it's one of those where I'm kind of like, all right, I how do I say this? There are certain people you look at and you kind of go, okay, I have no problem with you taking a soft or strong position in either direction based on your convictions. I'm a Baptist after all. I believe in soul liberty. But I do kind of dislike the I'm above this and I can just kind of comment without being directly involved in it. And I'm like, honestly, the it's a question that plagues every single church, and plagues in like the positive meaning. It puts pressure on the church and a good way to address it. And so I think Heiser ultimately was correct in where he came down on that question. I often found his arguments to just be kind of like, I'm not sure why there's this kind of splitting the baby on this. Either the Bible is this or it isn't this. And it doesn't mean, this or this in a strong sense. Most people recognize there are texts that are difficult to adjudicate on both sides. But Heiser just kind of, in my mind, at least on that question, kind of would split the baby in a way that I was like, I don't think this is ultimately helpful for the church, just honestly speaking. Especially as someone who's a pastor and has to preach and teach and serve and help people and do all that. Um, but again, I still like Heiser. I really despise the lies about him. I really dislike it. Um, what is the apocalyptic view of justification? Oh gosh, how much longer do I have before I have to go pick up Nolan? Let's see if I can find it. There's something really interesting in here. All right, so I'm trying to find something succinct because I have what I think, but I want to be as succinct as possible because it's very easy to kind of. Okay, so I think this will be helpful. What's up, Jamie? Okay, so this is from Rethinking Paul by Van Driel or Van Driel. Apologies if I'm not saying that right. Okay, so justification. You could argue. I'm trying to find what Campbell says because you have issues. You have Campbell and N.T. Wright actually is coordinate with this, although he's not in that camp. Um, but you have Campbell, Kazemon, Gaventa, and others who are fairly unanimous. Isn't the right term, but there's a lot of overlap, but distinctive. It's kind of like being here. You go. It's kind of like saying when you say I'm not a Calvinist, right? Okay, Clayton, that's actually really helpful. I'm asking. Sorry, give me one sec. Add you as a moderator. Um, sorry, I just realized. I just realized I have like no moderators on this channel. So there you go, Clayton and Boss. You are now moderators. Let me click this. Okay, Clayton asked, "Hey Michelle, let's see. I'm asking to what primary difference. Okay, so the primary difference is this: justification in kind of the Reformed tradition, broadly conceived, very broadly. I'm cutting with like a Douglas Moo, would be something along the lines of imagine this. you have imagine just the image. It's not to say it's exact, but imagine a law court and a law court where an individual, where he or she is being sentenced, having done tremendous evil, and the issue is forensic and legal issues, or something like that. The issue is not about sin and death as cosmic powers. It's far more about individualized sin and guilt. It's kind of, there's a transactional nature to it. However, that gets pushed is a little debated. But justification in the apocalyptic scheme is far more what we call liberation or freedom from sin, from the power of sin and death, and I would argue Satan, and all of that sort of stuff. So basically, uh, in a few words to sum that up, justification in the broadly reformed tradition is forensic, that it's legal or law centered. Whereas in the apocalyptic school, with like a Kazemon or a Campbell, and probably myself, would be far more about liberation, freedom, being emancipated from something. So the difference being God is a judge, a lawyer judge, so to speak, and then in the apocalyptic, God is the liberative king who, or the liberator who sets us free. So I don't know if that helps, and that's of course very simplistic, um, and I'm not sure I've got the best example, but hopefully that helps. What's up, Fire King and Clayton? You have no idea what you've just done. Well, I giveth and I taketh away. Um, Happy Advent. Yeah, but yeah, this book very helpful, and he's a systematic theologian, and so what's really cool to see is he is very conversant with Pauline theology and scholarship. And so if you want to see kind of how Pauline theology, kind of post New Perspective, uh, kind of factors in, imagine if Douglas Herink, well, that's probably not going to be helpful to most people. Imagine if Douglas Herink were less involved in that, and more involved in other stuff. Sam Wright, have I read Jason Staples' new book? No, I have his two books. He has 2 books or 3 books, I can't remember. They're in my Amazon wish list, and I'll probably have to deal with that in my dissertation, but that'll be further down the line. I'm not convinced I'll be having to tackle Romans 11 as much. I think that would just make my dissertation just too much. All right, let's see. I saw something. Scroll back up. Come on. So justification is more cosmological. It is more cosmological. It tends to eschew individualized issues, which I don't like. I'm far more integrative. I think there is a both and. I don't think these things are oil and water. I think they can be utilized together in a more systematic or coherent way than just kind of the disruptive, the sexual, the segregation of it, this thing over here, splitting it and doing that. I think there's far more cohesion to these themes. But yeah, it's cosmological, especially with Kazemon. I think he was right that cosmic powers are involved in this: sin, death, Satan, or satanic realm regimes. I would incorporate ideologies in there as well, false ideologies. So let me know if that makes sense. I think it is. You would say it's more. The apocalyptic does emphasize the cosmological over and against it. I say the cosmological is a vital component that helps color the individualized issues. So let me know if that makes sense. If not, I apologize. Again, I'm speaking off the fly, and I got about 12 minutes left before I have to go pick up Nugs. So, give me a sec. I should have brought some water in here. I'm talking a lot. Yeah. But yeah, that's turn that up a little. All right, is that still okay? Am I coming through all right? Because I can't quite. Oh my gosh, I just need to clean this desk off. I need to clean this desk all the way off. Anyway, let's see. Well, thanks y'all for being here. This is cool. Good questions, good insights. Let's see what else. Okay, so going back to the original thing. So I have once those 2 chapters are adjudicated and kind of just done and signed off on by both supervisors, then the rest of the dissertation will be a lot easier, because then I have 1 chapter on Colossians, Ephesians, and Philippians, kind of the cosmic universalism of those. I'll be dealing with that and engaging that. And then I have one on the a chapter on the pastoral epistles, which will be interesting because they often don't get used, at least in the apocalyptic school. And then I have a final chapter, which is on constructive theology, kind of how we put it all together. So on the basis of what has been argued on, the Adam Christ typology, which I actually need to go back and add 2 Corinthians 5 into that, which will be interesting. But how all that gets put together and how that works out theologically versus just here's what the texts say and all that. It's no fun one. The text says this. And it's like, cool. Now, what does that mean for church? What does that mean for baptism? What does that mean for human faith? How do you construct a participatory reality beyond just what the texts argue or how you think the text stand? And so, yeah, once these 2 chapters are signed off on, one chapter will be, I think, more augmented. The other one will probably have to be majorly rewritten. And that's just my mess up. I didn't. One of the things you discover when you do a PhD or even a master's program is you discover the deeper you go into a subject, how woefully unprepared you probably are for it. So, for example, I'm learning German as quickly as I can. My German, I'm still trying to figure it all out. I'm probably going to have to learn a little bit of other languages in order to do certain things. I got to brush up on my Hebrew. And you just begin to realize, like, the Dead Sea Scrolls is, the is a black hole of just stuff to go into. You're like, oh my gosh, you never realize how much something has been written on something until you realize how much something has been written on it. You're like, oh my gosh, instead of just a footnote, this footnote is now an entire page. And I've got a few, there's like 4 or 5 footnotes in my dissertation that are just like, it's a whole page where all it is me arguing with a certain scholar. It's just like, oh my gosh, no, wrong, or yes, no, yes, or something like that. Yeah, German, Michelle, German's actually been a little easier once I kind of get the cadence of it. The difference is theological German is very difficult, or at least it is for me and a lot of people, so I rest in that. But this is going to sound weird. At the end of the day, once the dissertation's done, I don't anticipate doing lots of work in German. Maybe being able to read it. I mean, for example, someone, I won't name them, a scholar said something along the lines of, if you can translate a page of German in 20 minutes with, a lexicon or something like that, or whatever it is, then you're good. And I'm like, ooh, 20 minutes, it's impressive. So I'll have to deal with that. But yeah, it'll be a beast. But I've got until 2026 to do all this, and then it gets submitted out. I know people get passed. I know people get through it because a few of my the folks in my cohort have gone on. One of them, she finished her PhD and is now teaching adjunct somewhere and presenting papers and stuff. And she's awesome. Another guy, I don't know if he's finished or is finishing his PhD under Mike. He'll probably get a position somewhere. So it's pretty cool. Maybe the final thing I'll talk about is what do I do with a PhD now that I'm done, or when by God's grace I finish it, because the job market sucks for PhD people. There are limited. Okay, I shouldn't say that. There are plenty of openings for adjuncts and that sort of stuff. So teaching a class somewhere is not going to be an issue. It'll be about, is there anything in terms of tenure or job security that you'll get in my field, specifically New Testament studies? And at this point, probably not. There are too few jobs. The economy's bad for it. A lot of seminaries and universities are cutting and removing jobs and opportunities and stuff like that. And everything, I think with everything going online, people are moving towards an adjunct. Adjuncts will be kind of the big push forward. And while that's helpful, it does mean you are more of instead of a career bureaucrat, you're more of a mercenary for hire, which is good if you can get it, but you have to go fight for yourself and fend for yourself, so to speak. So my anticipation, because I had to answer this on my assessment, my personal assessment, lord my PhD over everyone at every chance. Yeah, no, gosh, I hate it when people do that. No, for a day maybe I'll be dictator, a PhD dictator for a day, and just do that. My sense is I think what'll probably end up happening is I'll stay in pastoral ministry and publish on the side. I have a few books I want to write. My wife and I are thinking of writing a book. Um, so, and she's got her PhD that she's winding down, thank God. And so what'll probably happen is I'll write books, publish, go to conferences, maybe teach a few adjunct classes, but I don't anticipate sitting in an office for 8 hours a day teaching students how to do things. I think that's probably just not what's going to happen in the future. And that's good. That's fine. Um, I suspect being a pastor theologian out here in Los Angeles is where I'll just end up being, which I'm totally cool with that. I think ultimately that'll be more fulfilling in terms of life and ministry and calling. Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate it. Uh, so yeah, what else? I got 5 minutes. Let's see. So yeah, I mean, and I've already taught a class. I shouldn't say I taught. I was a tutor at Ridley for a Romans class for Mike Bird's Romans class, and that was fun. Got to learn a lot. Got to grade student papers, which was fun. So let's see. I was thinking of getting my in text criticism, but if you watch the I actually understood that reference. Um, yeah, text criticism is experiencing, as I understand it. I'm way behind on text critical stuff, but text criticism is becoming a is experiencing a massive sea change right now because you have digitization, computers, all that sort of stuff, analytics on that front. It's kind of like equivalent to a good equivalent. Text criticism has undergone and is undergoing the Moneyball effect. For those who don't know, baseball was done. Baseball scouting, lineup construction, batting, and statistics, all that sort of stuff was done very differently before Moneyball. Um, and but once Moneyball happened, Billy Bean and all that, then baseball and the way you did baseball and analytics and stats and stuff revolutionized. It's changed with and that's happening or has happened and is happening with text criticism. So if you're going to get into text criticism, Michelle, consider it. Now would be a good time because you'll be at the cusp of a lot of that stuff. Um, the only issue is where you're going to go for text criticism, getting your PhD. I can think of there's probably three places text criticism wise that are probably worth going to for text criticism. Although the chief one probably be the University of Birmingham in England, which is distance. I think it is distance, but I think you have David Parker there, and David Parker is an expert in that. He's really, really interesting. Oh, everyone's getting ready to leave. Sweet. Bye, boss. Take care. Jamie says, I look up to you even though you are younger and shorter than me. I doubt that. I'm 6 foot, babe. Like, I'm 6 foot and all torso. Like, that bear hug when we meet is going to be very, very rough for you. Just prepare thyself. Let's see. I gotta go. Fire King, could y'all be praying for me? My family, large job is closing after my new job. Oh man. All right. Well, yes. I'll pray right now. Loving God, lift up Kyle to you and his family. We lift up his wife. We ask for protection and wisdom and rest during this time. We ask that she would find a job that is empowering and financially rewarding. And same thing with Kyle. That at the end of the day, we do not ask for the world. We ask for enough. And it is in enough we pray. Amen. So, Lord be with you. I'm trying to get Harvard to let me do it, even though they don't officially offer text criticism. Oh, well, if you can get into Harvard, well, I mean, you could probably there are probably professors at Harvard that you could work with on that. I mean, John Collins, a bunch of other people. You could probably, Michelle, you could probably totally get Jamie 6'4". Yeah, with your pumps on and your DeSantis shoes, maybe. Sure. But Harvard would be cool. If you can get into Harvard, that's a pretty good ride. I don't, well, Baylor might be a good place too, but the only issue is you'd probably have to go move to Texas. So, but I don't know. I'll be praying for you, Michelle. I think you got this, though. That'd be really cool if you can get it. All right, y'all, I'm going to hop off right now. I got to get my shoes, grab everything, and then go pick up Nugs and then feed him, and then work on dissertation/sermon stuff because it's going to be a very, very busy week. But God bless you. Take care, and yeah. Let's see what do I click to get out of here? Oh boy. Oh boy. What do I click? No, I don't want that. Okay, how do I click? Oh, there it is. Peace, everyone.